Hello and welcome to Saltwater for the Soul. You're here with myself, Mandee Elam. I'm so honored to hold this space always. We have incredible conversations, not always the most comfortable, but definitely necessary and help us to heal and be part of our path and speak to our souls. So today I have one of my favorite soul friends who has discovered many, many aspects of herself throughout this lifetime. And I'm so honored to hold space with her. Welcome, Leslie Lyon. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I'm honored to hold space with you. What's going on? Who are you these days? How are you feeling at this moment?
So
The ebb and
I'm
flow.
an endless entrepreneur, but at the moment, that's not been the central focus of my life. Of course, I'm still self-employed and I'm always probably going to be in that space, but I am definitely in a space of deep allowance for whatever is coming forward. And there is a lot coming forward for me to look at and hold. And I'm like, honestly, I'm in a bit of discomfort in my life, but I've spent my whole life headed towards discomfort in order to get to the other side of whatever the discomfort is. And as I'm in that space, I've learned that that's where my greatest power is, even though it feels super vulnerable and uncomfortable and like, what are we doing?
Right? But that's like the ultimate bravery because that's just it. We work so hard to become conscious, to become awakened, to become successful, to keep up with society. We have to survive. You got to take care of yourself and your families. Like it's a lot out there. But ultimately, when we're on this path, you get to this ultimate surrender of, well, if I'm really doing this, then everything I created, it should be all right to let that go too. And that's like, oof, well, there better be great reward on the other side of this.
Yeah. So in the last 2 years, I have closed or sold three businesses. I've moved twice. My children have gone from living with me full time and being minors to all adults and living on their own. And I feel like that transition alone, just from being a full time mom to an empty nester, was a very huge pivotal moment for me. And for those of you that don't know, I have six children. They're amazing. I feel like I raised some of my best friends, but when you're in the thick of that, you just go, go, go and do. And, I left an abusive relationship while they were young, and there was not a lot of space for me to feel and to really integrate the elements of that deeply impacted me. So over the last 2 years, I've spent a lot of time alone, which is a very new thing for someone who grew six humans in her womb and lived with them full time. And then I had felt like I had no option but to be successful financially. And I was, and I always will be. But in the last 2 years, I've recognized that I spent a lot of time proving myself and channeling a lot of my discomfort into making a way for myself business wise. And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to channel from a place of more wholeness, less proving, less striving, less I need to have these things in place to feel safe, more of just I don't have to control everything. I don't have to prove anything to anyone. I've literally done everything I said I was going to do. And when you're on the other side of that, there's kind of this moment of what what do I do now? And I think that space, although uncomfortable, has been really enlightening for me because I realized how much of my inner being was not focused on really the simple things, the relationships, the aspects of growth that I love. They were more focused on finances and how I did and what I accumulated or how I showed up. And as I got to that space of that doesn't mean very much to me anymore. And what does that mean for me now? There has not been, still is not a lot of answers to those questions. And I'm finding myself just being, just being, and I don't like, I'm not super comfortable with just being. And I find myself like, oh, you should go work out. Well, then my body shut down and I couldn't go work out and I couldn't do all the things, like we create this tool belt to
Mm,
cope and to process and to deal with things. And I have millions of tools with which to work, and none of them were supporting me like they used to. And so I was just like, okay, this is weird. I don't know what to do. And in the past, I would have like, oh, you need to take a class, you need to do this, you need to do that. And now I'm just like, nah, I'm just gonna sit out under a tree or go out on my paddleboard, which is great.
yeah.
But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't have any answers. And it's kind of like freeing. It's kind of freeing in a lot of ways. And then my logical brain is like, what are we doing?
Right. Because you're
Yeah,
so conditioned. I'm very much a generator, and we're so conditioned to go, go, go. And like was like, when you were watching the numbers and like you had 6 babies to take care of, like that needed to be a goal. And yes, relationships needed to be focused on, but you also to survive and thrive, you needed to do that. Now, oh, I'm bowing to you. I can't even imagine what it's like to release all of those little babies into the world and then be on your own. And I'm also just so proud of you to hear this conversation of like allowing yourself to just be and see what is so that you can receive. And that's brave and vulnerable and scary.
it is scary. And honestly, what's come up is a lot of the things that for sure I dealt with at a layer when I could, but because my time was limited, I did box up a lot and was like, well, look at that later. And those things are now coming up and in the form of like some PTSD and some trauma responses. And like, I'm very good at holding space for others and for myself in that capacity. But at the same time, as a society, we kind of view that as a negative space. And I'm recognizing I have negative feelings I'm projecting onto it that aren't accurate. That it just can be that my body is triggered or that my soul is overwhelmed, and that especially when you have 6 kids, you learn to ground with other humans more so. And we all are made to do that for sure. But then there's not like, I still have relationships with them, of course, but it's different when they're not directly in your house. And like, we just have these things that we do together. And so this aspect of myself is very much the individual. And because I had kids so young, I'm not familiar with Leslie as an individual. And so holding space for what's coming up and having so much time, which is something I always thought I wanted. Now I'm like, oh,
Now your soul and your higher consciousness are like, knock, knock, knock. Remember us? You created this space for us to heal now. Here we go.
yeah. And like, my youngest moved in with his brother in Colorado, and I moved to Washington. And I thought, oh, this is going to be amazing. Empty nest. I was in a relationship then, and I cried for 6 months.
I believe it 100%.
And I was like, what are we doing? What I mean, like I was very aware of the things that were popping up and coming up to be healed, and having been in an abusive relationship and walked away from a narcissistic experience, spent 7 years in court with this person who their whole goal was to destroy me. And it ended up hurting the kids as much as me. Of course, it hurt me, but long term, it hurt the kids. And I just spent so much time protecting them that now was my time. And I recognized that I had never felt safe to really feel that, because I didn't want to hurt the kids more. I didn't want them to have to hold my pain. They actively do that anyways because you're close, but to like actually feel it and embrace it while in the same house with them, I could not let myself do that. So the second that I was alone, it was just like this avalanche of emotions of grief and pain. And like, how did that happen to me? And it was so beautiful. But 25 years of pain and discomfort in 6 months was like, oh, we're going to fast track this. Okay.
Oh man, I bow to you. It's hard and it's so important for us to allow that to happen. And a lot of us can't. And I'm just so glad you were able to witness it and experience it. I'm really close with my mom. I'm just one of her kids. And moms are the mothership and we're all energetically connected. And we lived in Colorado for 2 years together as adult women, which was awesome and so fun. And then she moved back to the East Coast to get her master's degree. She went back to school late, which was so fun. I was like grown and watching my mom college kid. It was so fun. But I cried for 3 weeks. And I was so excited. I'm like, "Yoo-hoo!" Like I love my mom, love you, but like I'm gonna be on my own for a little bit here. It's gonna be great. I cried for 3 weeks. I was like, what is this? And I went through a breakup this past winter and I cried every day. Woke up every single morning at 444 and cried for an hour. And I just allowed it. I'm like, I know that this is this and more. And this, I always say to myself and my clients, like, sometimes healing comes up when it's safe enough for you to do it. And it's safe enough for you to release it so that you can finally let that out and let it just be and neutralize to make space for whatever we're going to walk forward to in the future. And that weird void in the in between is a scary, odd, strange ass place. But if you're brave enough to witness it, it's amazing too.
Yeah, it is a weird place. And it was, I think, I think I definitely was feeling very safe and I was not like, of course, my entire goal since I was 18 when I had my first son and just like I wanted to not project onto them. Of course you do, but that's life. And as I woke up and as I recognized the things that I could shift with them, that was my whole goal. And when that was no longer the front and center, and I didn't have to make all this money to be in court, it was like I got to just kind of let all my walls down and it all just kind of oozed out. And then I could decide what needed to stay, what I wanted to stay, who I wanted to be. And at that time, I still had some coaching clients, like financially, I was fine, but I was definitely more restricted than I was used to. But it actually felt really wholesome to me because I had spent so much time proving myself as an entrepreneur that I really felt like it was a healthy space for me to hold for myself and to just like at that point I was in a relationship. So it wasn't just me anymore having to do it all, which was new and weird and kind of scary, but also it was very nice to relax into that. And he was very good to me. And I think like he held such beautiful space for me because that was a lot that came up. And he was very kind and understanding, just like, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, isn't it? Because it's a long time.
I so appreciate you saying that, but I'm not believing it right now. I'm just questioning. I'm not sure. Yeah, I feel you.
It was really beautiful. And then I started to, come back to myself and I ended up, I had told myself I was never going to start another business again, which I knew was not true.
I can't even imagine that for you. In the short time I've known you, I can't even imagine that for you.
So I had this one client reach out to me and he's like, I need help with this, and this, all things I'm more than able to do. But I had so much resistance to it. I still crack up that I told him this. I was like, I'll do it, but you don't get to tell me when to work. You don't get to tell me what to do. You don't get to, I had all these things that he's like, perfect, just do your thing and, let me know when it's ready. And I was like, okay. So I did that. And then I recognized that that particular business was an element of all the other businesses that I loved. And so I made a commitment to myself never to take anything on that I wasn't enjoying and loving fully. And so that's how my latest business started. And it took off probably a little bit quicker than I was prepared for. And that was great and very confirming and confidence building. And it gave me the ability to kind of ground a little bit more and not be quite so in my feels. And, being self-employed has ebbs and flows and it's a new business. So it's up, it's down, it does its thing. And I just let it. And I really enjoy just working with people that I resonate with that are in a similar space, not identical, but a similar thought pattern to me. That's been really fun for me. And then I just don't work as much as I used to. And that is really nice and I'm enjoying it.
And such an adjustment from
Mhm.
being so, and I was reflecting too with, with you being an empty nester. I've read a lot of things and studied a lot of things. Lots of like conscious couples have separate bedrooms so they can be in their own astral planes and, not be entangled with other people and things. And I feel like that time when my mom left, that was my first time really living alone and being alone too. And there is this big unplugging. A lot of people, some people experienced it during COVID times. They were all alone for the first time ever. Some were packed on in with their friends and family and, traumas and dramas too. So there was lots of experiences then. But there's a gift in that and unplugging from everyone else. And our energies go 6 to 8 feet around us. So we absorb whoever we're around, we are connected to, whether we want to be or not. And it is a wild experience to let that happen. And I'm grateful too for, I believe relationships are always there for an exchange of some sort to teach us, to show us, to grow us, to hold space. And I'm grateful for the masculine who came into your life to hold that space at that time in that relationship and stuff. And like, I'm so glad you were able to have someone hold you through that container, whether it's just that chapter or it goes on forever, it's all sacred and it's all beautiful. And I think giving ourselves permission to let relationships go as long as the season allows it to is a brave thing as well. And I was happy to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, so that relationship I actually expected to be a very long-term experience. And I was kind of shocked when it wasn't, but at the same time, it was such a like we were so good to each other, and I recognized that our timeline was closing. It was almost instantaneous from my perspective. And that definitely surprised me, but it was really such a beautiful thing, especially coming from an experience where I spent 7 years in court trying to get out and protect myself and my kids, to say to this person that I loved deeply, like, I think that our relationship is over. And to have him accept that, acknowledge that, and we really parted amicably, or as amicably as we could. There were definitely moments of stress, but overall, it was like, okay, this timeline is closing. I'm being directed to Colorado to live near my adult children. Four of my kids are in Colorado. And that, like, originally we had talked about me flying back and forth from Washington to Colorado, and I recognized I didn't have the capacity for that, and I didn't want to do that. And I genuinely felt like our relationship had completed what we could do together. And I've never had an experience where I could say something like that so freely and have it be accepted and not maliciously, counteracted in some way. So not only did he hold really beautiful space for me while we were together, when we parted, he was able to accept it. We both had our moments for sure of like, this is uncomfortable,
I
but
mean, you're merely humans. You can't be robots going through it too. There's space for all of it. And as we grow and become more conscious and graceful, you're still going to be a human. You're still two souls showing up in this reality.
yeah, so that part was just like otherworldly. So I left that relationship and I got to spend 6 months in California with my oldest daughter and her kids. And that was really healing because there's different things with each of your kids that you have that you get to solve and work through together. And it was really beautiful. And then I came here and Colorado in February, and like being with my four kids here has been like so much fun, and watching them do their things. And adult children is such a fascinating transition because like I know they talk about empty nest, but it's really weird until you're in it to really understand the differences and the fact that they choose me to be their friend. Because I really believe that when your kids are adults, they're going to let you know how your parenting was,
Oh yeah, no doubt.
one way or another.
Yep.
So the fact that they still want to be around me and that they enjoy me and they include me in all their things, I'm so excited. I feel like I did six things in this life really well.
You did. And like, I trust that so much for you and all the moms who went through that. Like, I feel like y'all chose each other and you came into this wild earth school and did the dance. And your relationships now, I think this is where a lot of that intergenerational healing comes from. Now we're creating space to be happier, healthier, live way longer. And like as adults, odds are you're going to have a relationship with your kids as adults way more than them as kids. And that's where we get to truly form friendships and create healing and show up. And, I have, I'm sure she'll tune into this episode, one of our lovely Sea Goddess crew and clients. She's incredible, but she's gone through all kinds of healing and is recently, over the past like 7 years, I believe, sober and has a lot of like healing to do. She's done tons of healing with herself, but still with her kids and like seeing where things are at with that and watching her just be able to hold the space and like give the grace and let them come around and things like it's so cool because I'm like, this is where the work's really happening. This is where, we're really able, if we allow ourselves to have these healing conversations and set each other free.
Yeah, there have been 3 different time frames where I had a 5-year break with one of my kids, a 1 year, and then a about a 1 year with another one. And there was so much discomfort for me in that of wanting it to be different, but recognizing that the only options I had were to hold the space they were requesting in whatever way they were requesting it. And definitely felt like some injustice. But at the same time, I was like, because I've gone through, I'm actually not in communication with my own mom right now. And I've gone through different seasons where I was processing my childhood, which was extremely unsafe. And I chose not to be in relationship with them. So it was like, it was such an interesting perspective to be between like doing that with my own parents and watching my children do that in their own way and just holding the space of respecting their choices while also honoring my choice to not continue to have a relationship with one or both of my parents at different times. It felt like the weirdest sandwich I've ever seen in my life.
It's trippy.
It was so interesting. And it gave me the ability, I feel like it gave me a really strong ability to understand why my kids might need space and what they were going through. And, like coming out of an abusive, they are the product of an abusive marriage. And no matter how much you, as the person being abused, think that you're protecting them, you did not protect them. They saw it all, they felt
I
it all.
know. Hmm.
And so, like, they're taking this data from their childhood memories and they're trying as an adult to comprehend it, to integrate it, to understand it. And they needed their space from their dad or I at different times. And it was, oh, not my favorite experience, but also like so beautiful because I always knew that it would circle back and be okay because I didn't put that pressure on them to like meet my needs. Like, that's not what this is about. Like, I just like you. I just want to be in relationship with you whenever you're ready. And whatever I need to apologize for, like, I'm happy to do that. If you want to dig into it, great. If you don't want to dig into it, great. Like, letting them chart the course. And I think having not experienced that from my own parents, it made it easier for me to show up for them in a way that I think was beneficial, even though I didn't enjoy that space.
And that's brave and that's holding space. What's some advice you could give to other parents out there going through it? What were some things you did to actually just let yourself hold that space?
You need your own support system.
Okay.
A lot of people have what they feel is a two-way relationship with their children, and your children aren't here to hold your pain. They're not here to hold your discomfort. That's not the place. They may actively think that's what they want to do with you. It is not. It's not their place. And they have enough on their plate. They don't need to hold your pain and discomfort. You need your own people, your own support system, whether that's professional or just friends. A lot of people can't afford to do the whole therapy thing and all of that. No big deal. Make sure you have solid friends that are encouraging you to hold that space, not encouraging you to project shit onto your kids. I have watched parents my age not be able to say they were sorry, not be able to accept responsibility, not be able to look at the duality of parenting. You can have done the very best job you could in that moment, and you can still have fucked them up.
Oh yeah.
And if you can't hold the duality of that, they're not going to feel like you took responsibility for the areas you lacked in, because you lacked. You're human. You did not see everything. You did not hold everything. Apologize. Hold the space. You don't need to be punished by your kids, for sure, but they don't need a lot from you. They just need to be able to say what they need to say, and it may not totally resonate for you. It doesn't matter. That is their experience. And one kid in the family can have an amazing experience, and the other five can have an absolutely horrible experience, and vice versa. Like, just because you did your best doesn't mean it was beneficial to them.
Oh, mic drop on that. So many parents need to hear that. And I think there's so much ego and shame and, well, I'm the parent, so I did it, this is right. And I see that time and time again of just that you can't say sorry to your kids. And
Yeah,
that's magic.
I'll say this a million times. Your response to your children's pain then and now is the reason they're not in relationship with you. You can shift it. Their pain is very tangible, very real, very much a part of their experience. And if you disregard it, or if you ignore it, or if you make excuses for what you did, you just amplified their core wound, when all you need to do is apologize and ask them how you can show up for them now better. Don't make excuses. Do not make excuses about how nobody wants to hear you did the best that you could. Everyone knows you did the best you could, or you would have done better. Doesn't matter. Just listen, just sit with their pain. If you cannot sit with their pain, you need to get outside help. You have to be able to sit with their pain. It helps them. It will dissipate the pain for them. It makes their core wound calm down so that they can process. If they feel like you can't hold it with them, it amplifies their core wound, and they're going to spend their lifetime trying to find someone to hold it with them. And you're intimately the perfect person to hold it with them, because you helped create a core wound. And if you can be the one that holds it with them, they don't have to go spend the rest of their life seeking out someone else to help them hold it. That creates an entire lifetime of pain in some people.
True. It's true. This is potent and this is real. And this is where the work is. Do you have advice for parents of we'll keep going with adult children who have apologized, who, have taken accountability, and maybe the kids aren't quite ready to accept it. They're still angry and resentful and all of that. What's some advice you have around healthy boundaries with that? Because I see that sometimes they'll be brave enough to show up and say they're sorry, and then the kids are, it's hard for them to have, they'll have reactions, and it could take years before they come around to that apology.
You're the parent. It's your
Mhm.
responsibility to hold however long of space they need. Like I said, I went 5 years without seeing one of my children and my grandchildren. And it was my place to hold that space for her and send love to it. And when she was ready, she cycled back around. And if I had pushed, it would have added to her core wound. Our children are all different, and they all have their own process in it, and their own, partners and kids and things they're processing, things you may not know. A lot of parents think they understand their child's experience. You understand it from your perspective. You have no idea the other elements that impacted them, from sibling relationships, from their relationship with their dad, their relationship with aunts, uncles, and cousins. If your child was the scapegoat, like, there is so much to unpack there in the family dynamics, and your entire responsibility as the parent is to hold whatever space they ask. If they don't want you to send birthday cards, don't. If they don't want you to go show up at things, don't. You have to respect their autonomy, because sometimes in the family, there's a loss of autonomy for one or more of the people, and it's really common. And as they're healing and as they're bringing forward their pain and they had the courage to come to you, maybe one apology isn't enough. Maybe I've had this happen numerous times. As they feel safe, a little bit more trickles out. And you're like, shit, I had no idea. And then you hold the space again of, I'm sorry, how best can I support you now? And then, you go 3 months and a little more trickles out and you're like, oh my gosh, this poor baby. If you can look at it from that perspective, that their experience is 100% known to them, and you only get the visual of what they're sharing with you. You understand it from your perspective, but you don't understand it from what they integrated, what they took in, what they heard. I look back on some of the things that I've said to a couple of my sons, and I'm like, oh my God, how did I ever say that? How did those words come out of my mouth? That was a different Leslie. But for them, that's the Leslie that they know. That's the mom that they know. Those words are etched into their brain. They have no idea I've died 25 times since then and become a different person. So until they're willing to share it with me and I can take it objectively without, feeling like I failed. Did I fail? I failed a million different times, but it's not a reflection of anything. Sorry.
No worries. I can barely even hear it.
Oh, good.
We're in real life here.
Okay.
It's allowed.
Um, if I can take it from a place of neutrality and not it's determining what I did as a parent or if I'm going to have a future relationship with them. But as these things trickle out, as they feel safe with you, if you continue to hold that space neutrally with a lot of compassion for yourself and for them, they're going to heal on their own, but you're also going to be able to hold it with them, and it expedites the process. Don't talk if you don't know what to say. Just, like choose your patent sentence. My patent sentence looks like this. I'm going to think about what you said. I don't really know how to respond right now, and I want to make sure that I respond well because this is a big deal to me. So I don't want to make like a rash thing here. I'm really sorry for your pain. I'm going to look at this. Can I circle back with you on that? Whatever that looks like for you to say to them, that gives yourself space, but also acknowledges, thank you for sharing with me. You can even say, I'm emotionally overwhelmed by this and I'm finding myself not knowing what to say because I'm scared I'll say something wrong. I've said that before. It allows them to remember that you're a human, because in the experience, you're their parent, you're not a human. And that's something that you're helping them see. I'm a human too. I'm trying to figure this out. I know I failed in some ways, but I want to show up better for you. That alone will help your child heal. They may have formed some walls that doesn't get through right away, and you don't get to determine that. That's where you go get the support you need. Do you think for 5 years I was overjoyed that I didn't get to do that? No, I was super uncomfortable, but I just had to like go to my people, go to my space and process it and, deal with my aspect of it so that I could show up better for myself and better for them. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, I don't know anybody who's doing this. I don't know any parents who are modeling this. And I felt like that my whole life. The second I woke up, I was like, okay, I'm a different parent now, and there's no one doing this, and I don't know what I'm doing. So nothing new under the sun there, but you figure it out as you go. And if you can just accept that their experience can be as challenging as they feel it is, and you can still have been a good parent and be gracious to yourself and recognize, yeah, Leslie now would have done that completely differently. I find it fascinating to hear my daughter talk to my granddaughters about how I used to parent versus how I parent now, because my granddaughters are just like, what? She would never do that. And their daughter's like, she did do that. Yes, I did.
I'm bowing to you, but you were just doing the best you could when you could. And with the information we had, like
Yeah.
parenting has just like drastically changed at a rapid pace, thank goodness, over the past 20 years or so. And so as you've had kids, there's been just development after development in how you can show up for yourself and for them. And like, your generation was all latchkeys. And before that, our parents, they were World War I generation children. They were not in good place. And so there's just so much that keeps unpacking.
Yeah, it was interesting too, having two different generations in my household. I had millennial children and then Gen Z children, and it was interesting how different they were and how much I say this, my kids all know this, like my youngest two revolutionized my parenting, revolutionized it. They came to this planet to change me as a parent. And I'm so grateful for that. But I also see the grief in my older four kids of like, why didn't we get a parent like that? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. She wasn't yet.
She just wasn't available yet. She was being polished and developed.
And it was, I mean, like to be able to shift mid-life and be like, okay, well, that did not work how I thought it would. So I'm going to do something totally different with these two. And it may not work either, but, and really the only thing I shifted was I had been a conservative Christian with the older four kids and really brainwashed. I was 100% brainwashed. And then I started recognizing like my kids were feeling shamed for being themselves. And I was like, I love that because they're pretty awesome. And so I started questioning the church. They really were the reason that I left the church and a big part of why I shifted so much. And then when I left completely my marriage and the church, I was like, okay, I don't like how that went and how they felt like they had to hide and they couldn't be themselves. And so I told these two kids, here's the deal. I'm going to hold this space where you can tell me anything you want, anything you want to do, any thoughts you're having, any desires that you have, anything you want to do. I want to be in the know, and I'm going to not judge you. There will be no punishment. There will be, natural consequences for things. But if you lie to me, that goes away. So as long as you're 100% honest with me, I will always have your back. 100%, I'm 100% on your team. If you lie, it's done, it's over. And we just like, that was our one rule, you don't lie. When things get really simple like that, it's fascinating what happens because they do whatever they want. They were going to do whatever they wanted anyways, but now I knew about it. And there was a couple of times where I was like, oh, and I had to like take off my mom face and be like, okay, here's the deal. You're 16. I'm whatever, 42. My frontal lobe is fully developed. Yours is not. I want to loan you my frontal lobe. And the only way they're going to accept that is if you have an open relationship where they don't have to lie to you. Your frontal lobe isn't going to be beneficial if they're only telling you 20% of the information.
Mm.
So let's talk through this. What does that look like? What are the possible consequences? What could happen? And do you still want to do it? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Eyes
What?
wide open.
And that was my first realization that I had to develop this 100% transparent relationship with them so that they could borrow my frontal lobe anytime.
Love that.
And I think like that shifted not only my experience, but their experience where they could genuinely be human. And then pretty soon all of their friends are over and like processing with me. And I'm like, and I heard this no less than 10 times. Like, it is so nice to be with an adult who doesn't judge us, who recognizes that we are humans too, and we're trying to make really difficult decisions and not knowing what to do. And I was just like, whoa, wow. And I felt so privileged. Also, I was terrified a lot of the time because they were doing whatever they wanted.
Yep.
But it was so beautiful because I was the first phone call. I was there to support them. And miraculously, they all lived. So it's great.
You know, it is. And you did the very best you could. And just being brave enough to allow, like you said, yourself to die and be reborn so many times. I think that's what gets people stuck the most is feeling things slipping away, feeling things wanting to change. And then your ego or your pride or your beliefs getting in the way of it. And then it creates a lot of damage for yourself and others.
Yeah, for sure. I really felt like I never knew what I was doing. And so it was really easy to not have an ego about it because like parenting is intense. And it was just like, okay, well, I clearly don't know what I'm doing. So I may as well loop them in on their own process and be a part of it with them. And for me, what it did was create just like the most beautiful relationships with my children, which is really ultimately what we all want as parents and as children, is to just be able to be ourselves with the people that we love the most without judgment.
Hey, without judgment. It
Yeah.
happens so much. All right. So my last question on this topic is now flip back into you holding the space with your parents and deciding when you want to talk with them and when you want and you don't want to. What's your advice for children setting boundaries with their parents when their parents maybe aren't receiving what they're wanting to share and all that?
For me, I've spent the last 7 years kind of deconstructing what happened to me as a child, how that impacted my choices as an adult, and how I ended up where I am. And as I did that, I started to recognize that my parents were unable to protect me in a variety of ways, which as a parent, I understand that. But then as the child, I don't. And so at different points, like I shared that my kids would eke out information, I would eke out some information to my parents to test them and to see how safe it was to share with them. And at first, sharing that with my mom went pretty well. It was very confirming for me. And then later it became problematic for me. And for me, my litmus test was if the pain of being around her is more than the healing of being with her, then it's not a space I'm willing to hold for myself with her. That varies dependent upon how much we're processing and how much is coming forward. I had extensive childhood abuse, and that I always knew that my dad couldn't hold it. So I never tried to do that with him. So I have a pretty surface level relationship with him. He loves me, he adores me, he would do anything for me, but we don't tend to go too deep into things. And he has his own, stuff that he's working through on that. And I
I think
respect that.
that's potent sometimes accepting our parents as they are. And you sometimes like, hey, they're not going to evolve all that much, maybe, and accepting
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's done a lot to try and do that. There's just some restrictions there that I don't try and push on. In some ways, I think I expected more of my mom. And in some ways, that kind of set her up. But that's just where I'm at. That's me being honest about it. And as her and I have kind of gone into this, she's still a conservative Christian. So that's a concern for her about me. And it's really hard for her to hold that space that I am not that any longer, which I understand. I also think that's just crazy, silly. It's like Santa Claus to me now, but whatever. And so as I have eked things out with her, she just has a really hard time holding the space for me to be who I am. She needs me to be something else. And because I had such a huge responsibility down the line, I chose not to hold that space. And that's really where I'm at right now. I was very detailed, we'll go with that, in how I would like to resolve this. And um, I think that she has some work to do around her emotional intelligence. And I expressed that in a really kind way because I'm not malicious, but it was not taken well, the defensiveness with it. And so for me, like I know exactly what I need in order to be in relationship with her because I've already determined that. I also told her that so that it was achievable. because I don't want to set her up to fail. So I have my boundaries in place of, I would like you to take this item, this item, and this item and talk to a friend or a professional or somebody else about this. And could you please take this that I have shared and see what they say to you? And if this professional says that you're ready for me to come in to talk about it, I will do that. 100%. I was very direct on what I wanted. I felt like I communicated it very kindly, but she got defensive and, logically I understand it, but as someone who's been holding that space for her own children, I'm like,
Yeah.
in all honesty, like that's what it comes down to. And those are my boundaries. And from there, what she chooses to do with it is hers. I've only eked out probably 10% of what I experienced as a child, and she couldn't hold that. So why would I share the other 90%? That's just setting us both up to be hurt. So ultimately, to come back to your question, you have to determine your boundaries for yourself. I'm a big fan of communication, but sometimes no communication is the best option. And you can do a lot of the work outside of your family. I, as a mom, believe it makes my children's core wound simpler if I can hold it with them. But that doesn't mean, as the person with a core wound, that if my mom won't hold it with me, I can't heal. I can. 100%. I don't need that. I would love that. I would love that if she could hold it with me. And I would love it if I could get to a place where she didn't trigger the fuck out of me so hard that we could have more conversation. I'm not there. And I'm honest enough with myself. And I've been really direct with my boundaries. And I've expressed what I would like to see happen that could help me step in a little bit more. And she can't do that. And that, like, I'm not mad about it. I actually felt kind of relieved because it was like one less thing I have to hold. And then I've always focused down the line, like myself, and down the line is my responsibility. Like, y'all impacted me greatly and I love you, but that's gonna stay over there. And I'm gonna handle my shit and I'm gonna do what I need to do for my kids. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what I had energy for.
It's so beautiful. And thank you for sharing with us and thank you for breaking that down because I think a lot of people are trying to navigate, figure it out, and don't have the words and tools and even know how the boundary part works because we're all just so triggered. And then we got to go get our kid off the bus. And then we got to do this. And it's really hard to take a breath and a step back to process some of this and then set up protocols on how to handle it.
It's really uncomfortable. It is. And she's pushed a couple times on my boundaries, and there's been a couple of moments where I'm just like, I can't. But like I have my people that I talk through it with and that have gone through something similar. And I think sometimes in this life, certain things aren't going to get worked out, and we have to be okay with that. I'm open if it does, but if it doesn't, that's okay. And like, when people say things like, you only have one life, you only have one mom, I only have one me. Period. I only have one me, and I'm going to show up the best I can for me because for a lot of years I didn't. And for a lot of years, the people in my life didn't show up for me well. So I'm not here for that anymore. I'm here for the fullness and for showing up for myself and doing what's best for myself and reciprocating that to others.
Love that. And I'm grateful you're doing it. And I'm grateful that you're working on you and that you're here, still shining your light.
Thank
So there
you.
was something else we were going to chat about today, embracing being single or the
Mm.
space of holding space with ourselves outside of relationships, perhaps. You have some new experience with that you were maybe thinking about sharing with us a bit.
Yeah, so for the last 2 years, I've been working actively on decentering men. And I think it's a very broad concept. And once you start digging into it, you get kind of mind blown about how much of your life, how much of all of our lives is centered around men's feelings, men's experience, men's support, men. And it really kind of takes away from the individuality of a person, even from the individuality of men, because they're like falsely placed in this place of authority that they didn't earn, they don't deserve. And, some men do, some men are great, but not all men should be elevated in the way they are, like leveling the playing field. Like we're already at a disadvantage just by being born into a feminine body, from wages to vulnerabilities to the physical aspects of what can happen to us. Not that that doesn't happen to men, but percentage wise, more so to women. So what I've recognized is, and I'm going to credit my youngest daughter to this because she's came out a feminist from day one, and I had no idea even what a feminist was when I gave birth to this child. But she said something to
I just
me.
love our souls. They
I
do
know,
their thing.
it's amazing. It's amazing. She's probably 3 times in my life, she's had these one-liner sentences that literally shift my entire experience. And I'm like, okay. But
Yeah.
she's got a younger brother and then 3 older brothers and a sister. And we were newly in this house where I'm single. And she looks at me and she goes, "You treat Walker differently than you do me." And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And she goes, "Your expectations are different. Your rules are different. How you talk to him is different. Um, if he doesn't want to do something, he doesn't do it. If I don't want to do something, you get all over me." And I was just like, she's right. She was 100% right. And I knew from that moment on that I would spend the good majority of the rest of my life kind of adjusting mentally what I think is appropriate for women and men.
Mm.
And it was so steeped within me that I didn't even realize it was happening. And this has gone, this has been going on in different layers and levels over the last 7 years. And one thing I just did was I went to buy a new car and I requested a woman salesperson, and I got some pushback from the guy on the phone. And so I chose to handle it like this. And I said, "Okay, well, what time is my appointment? Who will I be speaking to?" And he gave me his name. And so I reiterated again, "I would like to work with a woman." And he says, "I'll make sure you're comfortable throughout the entire process." And
Ugh.
it was the perfect setup because
Oof.
because I said, "This has nothing to do with you. I can handle my own. I have no issue dealing with you. I want women to make more money. I want women in business to feel more supported by other women. And I think this is an important aspect of being a woman's woman. And if I get there and I'm not dealing with a woman, I will be talking to your manager." And it went flawlessly, and it was a beautiful experience for me. And I can't believe I had never thought of it until this moment to do something so simple. So, like, those are just a couple of examples of it. But in dating, I have kind of prioritized dating, and just like it's not as big of a, where in the past, like being in a relationship, I definitely wanted that. I desired that. I think my last one was so beautiful. I recognize, oh, I'm doing so much better. I'm much healthier. I can hold that space in a really beautiful way, but I don't need to be in a relationship. I don't need to prioritize dating. That's going to come of its own accord, and I don't need to spend a bunch of time on these apps. And, like I can just let it unfold however it unfolds and whatever that looks like. And I've always been really great single because it was so empowering to me. So that aspect of it isn't as challenging for me as it is for some people. There's some security that comes with that, but I also provide that for myself. So it's just been a really interesting process, just even the mental aspect of decentering men and what it looks like. Even like some people dress for how men will like it, some people do their hair for how men will like it, decorate their house. I love the way things are shifting to doing whatever you want for yourself. And if a man comes along beside you, cool. If he doesn't, who cares?
I love that. And it's hard, especially there's just so much pressure around it for so many people. And we're so conditioned that if you're not, married and have kids or this or that or whatever it is, then something's wrong, something's not right. And with the women, we're healing that generation by generation and taking independence back and seeing things, from different perspectives. And it's hard because it is deeply, deeply, deeply conditioned in all of
All of us, including men. And I think that that's something that as a society, like, It's not their fault, but it is their responsibility to shift some of their thinking and to open to more expansive thought patterns and the evolution of that. And I've seen so many men rise to the occasion, and I'm really enjoying that. But ultimately, like, it's really about that individuality of it doesn't, some of us, like, it's not our life story to get married and have children. That doesn't diminish your contribution to this world. And in actuality, can make you so much more effective in some ways. Coming from someone, now I'm not in any way saying my situation should be different, but coming from someone who that was my entire life, was being married, submitting to a husband, and having 6 kids. It was beautiful. And I know I contributed to the world in a really beautiful way. But it has taken me 7 years to realize that I'm something beyond that contribution. And like, I'm such a powerful energy, such a powerful energy. If it took me 7 years to realize I'm something beyond that, I was fucking brainwashed so much. And like, to be in a space where you're not having to overcome that indoctrination. Maybe it is different. Maybe it's like, what is your contribution? You can do anything. You're not inhibited in any way except for how you've inhibited yourself. You're not encumbered with that. Children are a draw. They're a beautiful investment, but they are a long-term investment, and it's a draw from your physical, mental, spiritual. If you don't have that, the beauty, the growth, what you can birth is unfathomable. It's so much further than just, I gave birth to a baby, really beautiful. But there's so much beyond that. And I think that as a society, women are starting to recognize like what they have to contribute, what they have to birth within themselves, what they have to give birth to is so much bigger than that.
Mm, I love it. And I agree. And I feel it with myself. I definitely was showing up in relationships when I was younger, and other versions of myself always, well, it was my fault. It's not working because I'm not making them happy enough, like the classic kind of housewife syndrome thing many of us got conditioned to. And then each time I have a relationship, I heal something else. Like one time I was with a guy for a couple of years and I healed my whole father wound. I had no idea that that was going to come out of that relationship, but it did. And I'm like, this is so precious. And then I was single recently. I was single. I was in a relationship for like a year, and then I was single a year. And I was in a relationship for 3 months this past winter. And each time I feel like I gain another aspect of myself back. I gain more of my truth back. I set another boundary. And then sometimes it's about the grace of letting it go. And for me at this point now, it's very much, I feel like I've captured my worth back enough where if it's not helping me to be a better version of myself at this time and helping me to feel better and bloom or grow, or if I am broke down, feel like it's a super safe place, then it's not serving me. And being brave enough to not always compensate for the other person and just step away. And that was a big lesson for me.
I feel the same way. And I think I felt really proud of myself in the last relationship, just recognizing this is not the fullest expression of either of us. And even though we thought it was going to be a forever thing, and that was super hard to admit, I was like, okay. But what I confirmed within myself was that I was always going to choose me. She's always going to be the top rung on the ladder, and there's no questions about that, especially when you've been prone to self-abandonment or codependency. It's like, damn, that was such a big deal for me. And I was like, that's so beautiful. And I'm still like very open, like, to the mirror of relationship, whether it's friendship or romantic relationship. But to be honest, my mirror is so lovely. I'm like, I'm really great. Really great.
I'm happy for you because I feel similar for me right now too. It took a lot of years and work and time to do that. And then my last relationship, I felt like it was kind of similar to what you're explaining. It was a little bit of silver platter at first, like, wow, this is it. All right, this is gonna be great. Here we go. This is what I've been wanting. A little different than what I thought it'd look like, but we can work with it. And of course, I can work with anything. And then I find myself starting to compromise a little, and then I find myself working toward the relationship and less of myself and the things around that, and then certain communication things came in and I was like, well, I know, like, I gotta communicate. I've come way too far to not not to experience, communication with this. And then just being brave enough to be like, all right, so, like, it's just shit's done. And sometimes, and that's the big thing you talked about too with parents, especially. Sometimes you get closure and sometimes you don't. And you can heal either way. You can create closure for yourself.
Yeah. Sometimes the not knowing is just that, just not knowing. And like, I think for me, I'm learning deeply how to release what I think should be. Just like, oh, that's just what you think it should be. What if it's so much better?
Oh, what if they have a wild surprise for me and I'm sitting here creating something like,
Yeah.
vanilla when I could have a whole rainbow? I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
I know. And I just think like I'm really enjoying the unknown most of the time. Sometimes I'm like, what's happening?
yeah, I do want to hug, but I'm going to keep being brave. Here we go.
So true. It's just like it's a really beautiful way to live. Also unknown, also scary, also like the most exciting. And I think just the reminder that being in a relationship doesn't make it any better. Those unknowns, it doesn't make it any better. And sometimes it makes it worse. So why
Well,
can't we just
it's that mirror, right? It reveals to you the shit you still need to work on.
totally, totally.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for spending some time and speaking with us and sharing your wisdom. This is such a potent and powerful discussion, and I know it's going to resonate and help so many people, particularly parents trying to get their shit together and wanting to, which is nice because we have way more parents wanting to get their shit together these days than we did in the past.
I know, it's really beautiful. I was just reading an article about how so many more men are spending time with their children than they used to. And I was, dang, that's powerful. Just that shift alone.
I literally see it all the time, like because I live on an island in New Jersey and I go to the beach all the time. All my first memories are at the beach, and I remember it being mostly moms and grandmothers with their kids at the beach. Sundays, sometimes you'd see the dads and stuff, but they'd be reading the paper, doing their own thing. Now I walk on the beach and it's family time. There's dads with kids all over the place, like and something else too, like I haven't been on the dating apps in a little bit, but when I was, I remember seeing a lot of people writing like hashtag girl dad and like being more proud to be dads and things like that. And I have so many friends who are stepping into it, and there's change happening. It's noticeable.
I love it. I know. I'm watching one of my sons that way. It's really beautiful. He's like, I don't want to work that much. I want to be home. The kids are little. He's like, I just want to make enough to be there for them. And I'm like, that's so cool. Or like the dads getting their fingernails painted and
Oh yeah, that's huge now. Oh, can you imagine when we were younger? I wasn't even allowed to dye my hair and I was born in 85, and like it's crazy, you know?
it is. It's so fascinating. I'm here for it, for all of it.
Too. Me too. So, Leslie, are you available for people to follow you or work with you at all at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can get you the link to my Instagram. It's Leslie Lyon 10. And then, of course, I'm on all the things. And then I do offer one-to-ones. And I have a marketing company if anybody needs support with their marketing or their branding or websites or all those things. So, yep.
Fantastic. Leslie, we give her a lot of credit because she's the one who introduced the idea of if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no. And if it's a maybe, it's a no for now, at least. And we just love you for that. We share it with everyone. And it's true because it's an energetic thing that you feel in yourself.
I still say it to myself.
Good. Me too. You planted the seed and it works. And I'm like, it's my little soulmate one. I'm like, yeah, it's a fuck no right now.
Yeah,
You're like,
exactly.
it's a yes. Let's go.
I love it. Yep.
And learning to trust that, not talk ourselves out of it. It's huge.
Yep. Or even if you falter, just enjoy the process. Like, oh, I could have done that different.
Yep. So please give Leslie Lyon 10 a follow on Instagram, and I will certainly post her information in the description of this episode. And I'm Mandee with Sea Goddess Healing Arts. I'm always honored to hold soul space with you all too. We have lots of classes and workshops and retreats and things, so check us out. And thank you again, Leslie, for taking this time. I'm so grateful.
Thanks for having me. It's always good.
You're welcome. Until we meet again.